Hello and welcome back to another episode of CharlaFootball. I am your host, Jerry Tavares, accompanied as always by Tomas and Jonathan, who's always going to be part of this moving forward. But we have a lot to talk about. City are Premier League champions, so obviously we're going to get into that. We're going to look at the Premier League table as how it ended. Then we're going to look at the Liga MX Ligia that is coming to a close with the final coming, I think, in a few weeks' time. And then we're going to talk about Liga MX and its format and the few questions that we have there. But first and foremost, how you guys doing today? It's Monday morning. It's a little early. I know not typical for you guys. How you doing?
Good, man. Getting the week started. Nice weather outside. Nice day to talk about this weekend's football. A lot to talk about this weekend, but excited to get into things.
All right. Tomas, how you doing today, bro?
Doing all right, bro. I'm a little sick, but here we are, bro. Just trying to get ready into this podcast.
Hey, the show must go on. But I appreciate you being here, even though you're sick. It's all right. But let's just get straight into it. City versus Tottenham happened a little over a week ago. And then there we saw basically everything play out over on Championship Sunday. So let's talk about that City versus Tottenham game. Would you guys say that Sun miss was probably what set up everything that happened this weekend?
Yeah, I think so because it really just showed you how this Tottenham team came out. Like they tried and they were just unsuccessful most of the time.
Hmm.
And I mean, it just summed up the whole game for Tottenham.
I feel like it kind of sums up their season a little bit. I don't know. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, definitely. This last weekend, we saw, Tottenham win what they needed to win. And last week, that Sun miss pretty much just set everything into stone. We all kind of knew Man City's going to win the title.
Hmm.
They have to win out their last games. They're out the Champions League. They have full focus on the Premier League now. Are they really going to lose? Like, they have the ability to play their best starting 11. And unfortunately, for a lot of Arsenal fans out there, that was it. I feel like as soon as that game ended, I was like, okay, yeah, Man City's champions. The odds of them losing to West Ham at home were very low. And we saw things played out this weekend. So,
Yeah, like we said, I think that Sun Miss was just like it completely just set up everything for what happened over the weekend. But before we even get into the City versus West Ham game where we saw City were crowned champions, let's first look at the runners up. We'll look at Arsenal, see what they did there. And in a game where I guess there were some questionable moments from Arsenal. I think they were down 1-0 for quite a while with the free kick by Idrissa Gueye. But they ended up catching up. They got back up on their feet, and there was like this sense of somewhat like a little bit of lost hope maybe in the fans and in the players too. I remember I saw Kai Havertz score his goal, and he tried to celebrate it, but kind of knowing that it was a little too late. So I mean, what did you guys think looking at that Arsenal Everton game and them finishing as runners up?
so I did get a chance to check out the Arsenal game. And they were down 1-0 almost before the first half until like Tommy also equalized. But even out throughout this whole second half, like they seemed like not themselves. Obviously, they were missing Bukayo Saka, which is a big piece of their puzzle. But it didn't seem as if they really wanted to play for that title because they knew already, like, okay, Man City's gonna win. And by halftime, they're already up 2-1. And once, like you said, Kai Havertz scored that goal, he didn't even celebrate the way he does, doing his celebration, his trademark and stuff. He just started running back towards the halfway line and said, okay, let's keep this game going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to watch the Arsenal game because I was watching the City game. Kind of like because they were obviously everything depended on them, on themselves, and Arsenal was depending on City to lose. But what I thought was funny is that I don't know which app it was, but it told like some Arsenal fans that City had tied 2-2.
Oh, I saw the celebrations. Like people were saying, like there was people in the stands like throwing up twos, like as if they were drawn. So
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty hilarious because, I mean, Arsenal's tied 1-1, yeah, at halftime, and then City's tied 2-2, and Arsenal thinks like, oh, maybe there's a miracle happening. I just thought it was hilarious.
yeah, it was unfortunate for Arsenal fans because it's like I said, it was like a little bit of that little lost hope that they still were holding on to. But I think there was really no doubt, like you said earlier, Jonathan, that there was no way West Ham was going to beat City at their home, especially knowing like this big occasion. Because we know City, when it comes to these big occasions, they always find a way to rise up.
Yeah, always.
And I think everything, it was settled within the first 2 minutes. You saw Phil Foden's trademark, set up, and then that curler to the top left-hand corner. It's the same one that he had against Madrid, basically. And you just kind of thought, okay, yeah, this is City's game. This is City's day. Like, they're gonna win the Prem.
But was there ever any doubt?
Yeah,
They're coming.
I don't think there ever was any doubt. We kind of already thought that towards like the last few games with their run, there was no doubt they were gonna win the Prem.
Yeah, I mean, but what an effort by Arsenal. They went undefeated for how many games was it?
I know since like the beginning of the year when everyone talks about that Dubai trip they took, came back and they were undefeated in 2024 for like a few months, I think it was, until they, besides the Bayern game, they lost to Villa at home, and I feel like their season crumbled from there.
Yeah, that was definitely a crucial fucking game for them.
One thing for Arsenal fans is like we could see every year they're getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, some way, Pep always finds a way. He always has that game in hand. For example, like we were talking about earlier, the Spurs game was that game in hand, which is why it settled everything into stone.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? There's always next year. We could always say that. Like Pep's, Arteta was under his management a few years ago at Man City. He was working with him. Got a lot of pointers out there, which made him like the excellent manager he is. But he needs those perfect pieces just to fit Arsenal next season.
I feel like all they're missing is just a number 9, like a killer, honestly.
Killer striker.
So they have a good squad and they have good depth too. Like they have enough to compete with City as we saw this year, but they're just missing that out and out player that really just stands out, honestly.
And the crazy thing is that Arsenal didn't lose to City this year.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Very true.
And I mean, in head-to-head, technically Arsenal took the lead, but City, on points table, how the league is run, they won.
So definitely, if Arsenal want a chance to compete next year, they have to sign a striker in the summer, and then maybe hope. I mean, if it doesn't happen next year, for sure, by the time 2025 comes around, because there's a lot of talk about Pep leaving in 2025, and he even mentioned it, saying that he's closer to leaving than staying, basically.
Yeah.
Like he said they're obviously going to hold talks in the summer, but I mean, what if that does play out? What if Pep does end up leaving in 2025, and then they have some sort of like resurgence, Arsenal or any other team? Honestly, there's going to be like definitely we're going to see, I feel, like a lift in the Premier League on other teams kind of stepping up. Do you guys think that'd be possible?
I don't think so, because the money that has been invested by Man City has been in the youth, in development, in every like lower tier that they have. It's not just buying big players in the actual starting. I mean, the actual team, like the 25 players who are called in week out. They have like a whole developmental system behind them, where it's not that they just rely on Pep. Obviously, Pep helps because of the style that he's brought to Manchester City. But if you look back a little bit, a lot of people thought that Pep would fail in England because it's too fast-paced of a game to play that type of style, and he succeeded because of the players that he had developed under him.
Definitely.
And now we get Foden, we get players like Alvarez that got there young to the club, where they were scouted young, where he knows that they would fit that system. And I just think that they're going to rely on a coach similar to Pep's style, or likely similar to his thoughts, like what he thinks, like a player that will benefit their squad.
Yeah. What were you going to add, Jonathan?
I agree with his statement. Man City is too deep in. Pep leaving makes total sense. He's won everything. He's done the treble, Champions League finally last season. He's won the Premier League now 4 times in a row, FA Cups, you name it, he's won it. Like him leaving, same story with Barcelona. I've won.
My bad, yo.
As I was saying, Pep has won everything in England. Him leaving makes total sense. Giving it one more year, and then leaving to who knows wherever he wants to go next. He's a proven winner. Bayern didn't win as much as he did in Barca and Man City, but he still made his team very well. Champions League runs every year. And just like Tomas was saying, their developmental system is really, really good. We've seen players obviously like Phil Foden, Cole Palmer was now at Chelsea striving. They have younger players, Rico Lewis. There's a lot we can name out there. And the thing is that every season they're also bringing in proven winners. For example, Guardiola, we already knew of him during the World Cup with Croatia, throughout his time in the Bundesliga. They're signing proven winners. They're not signing players that are potentials, but they're signing players that they know will fit into them well. If Pep wants to start this starting 11 for the FA Cup, this starting 11 for the Champions League and then another one for the weekend on the Premier League. He could easily do that. And not many teams have that ability to do that, which is why I think Man City separates itself from so many other teams in the world.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Pep has left his mark in England and anywhere he's gone. Anywhere he's gone, he's always left an imprint or some sort of, like we say, DNA left there. And I mean, whatever happens after, I guess we'll see. We'll talk about that more down the line if that even happens. But yeah, I mean, congrats to City. I guess you can't say anything. There was really, like we said, there was no doubt pretty much that they were going to win the Premier League. But I mean, maybe Arsenal could put up a better fight next year, winning the games that they really need to be winning. But now moving kind of towards the lower half of the table, we know how everything kind of shaped up. But one surprising one was Chelsea kind of picking back up from, like you had mentioned, a scrappy season. And now they're, I guess, kind of starting to build something.
A little more legitimate, I guess.
You can say.
Yeah, we all knew the joke about, them always being in 11th place all season. They would win a game, draw a game, then lose a game, and still somehow be in 11th place. But now towards the end of the season, not the end of the season, we see them qualifying for not the Europa League, but the Conference League, which is still European football at the end of the day, especially for a squad who invested so much money into their team. We're talking about the likes of Enzo Fernandez that they spent over 100 millions of euros on, Caicedo. Basically, the whole team, they invested a lot of money into it, and they weren't seeing that development early on, but it's because they had no chemistry. You can't play all these players together right before the season and expect them to play like the likes of a 2015 or a 2016 Chelsea when they had Hazard and all that stuff. You can't just buy the players that you once had before. And towards the end of the season, we saw him picking up more. Obviously, we all saw Cole Palmer doing his thing, playing amazing football. Caicedo stepping up a lot. Enzo Fernandez, getting a little hint against Arsenal, even though they got battered. He was playing somewhat okay before his injury. Their left back, I forget his name, Cucurella, playing really well throughout the last games. I feel like all they really need is to, set up what they're going to do with their attack. They have Nkunku now, Sterling coming off the bench, Jackson, who's not really getting favored by many fans. That's really all they need. Okay, we're playing Europa League next year or Conference League next year, but we also want to play Champions League the following year. How can we set ourselves up to have that team? Because obviously, as we all know, money's not going to put you in that situation if you're Chelsea.
No, I completely agree. They're going to need more than just, I guess, another decent transfer window in the summer if they really want to step it up. I think when it comes to buying players, they've done all they can do pretty much. They have a good squad. Now it's just about building what they have. And I think they have a good foundation. They have a great coach too that's able to get them to that level, a proven coach. Maybe he hasn't won a lot of titles or any titles, in fact, if you guys can correct me on that. But he's definitely been able to do, I guess, miracle works on teams that you don't really expect them to, like the Tottenham, for example.
Exactly. He was able to take a Tottenham team to the final 5 years ago. And he's been able to turn this Chelsea team around the second half, which if I was a Chelsea fan right now, I'd have a hopeful offseason. Whether they sign players or not, I don't even know if they're allowed to with the whole financial stuff going on. But they don't really need to. They have the players they need. Just build off of them, build more chemistry, and see how things play out in the long run. The Premier League is only 2 months once again because it's only the summer break and we're back at it again. But if I was a Chelsea fan, like I said, I would be hopeful. We ended off the season primarily how we wanted to, even though it was a little bit too late. At least they got European football.
Yeah, for the very least. Even if it is Conference League, it's still somewhat of a financial boost, and you're still going to be playing, I guess, important matches.
Exactly.
What do you think the most?
Well, yeah, I mean, after losing to Arsenal 5-0, there was a turnaround in probably in pride of the team. How would we lose to anybody 5-0? We're 2 times European champions. We've won many Premier Leagues, and they really had a turnaround in form after losing to Arsenal 5-0. I mean, they tied Aston Villa, but other than that, they went on a 5-game winning streak. So yeah, they really turned around in form, and maybe there was a deep conversation, in the locker room where they fixed the patches that needed to be fixed, and going into next season, maybe after the Euros, there'll be more of a morale boost.
Hopefully, yeah, it'd be good because Chelsea is a historic club, whether we like that or not. It's true. They're one of the biggest teams in England. So I think we have to see them, like Manchester United, for example, who are also struggling. These are the type of teams that we're accustomed to seeing fight for top four, fight for title races, going into the Champions League. Like that's where they should be, not barely scrapping into Conference League football.
Exactly.
But
There's also that conversation also, like if they had a full healthy squad, we didn't get to see Nkunku, who we all knew was an excellent player. He only played maybe like a handful against Chelsea this season because of his back-to-back injuries. The goalkeeper Roberto Sanchez, who had a good season at Brighton before, Reece James, their right back situation, so many injuries. But like you said, we'll see next season.
yeah, for sure. I know something else that we wanted to bring up was the fact that Brighton, or not Brighton, are letting him go, but the Zerbi's leaving Brighton, basically. One of the most sought out coaches, as you've mentioned before. And I mean, I think he's such an incredible coach. I think anybody would be lucky to have him. I don't know why they would be letting him go. Yeah, maybe they didn't finish out the way they started, but like we've all seen, Brighton play an attractive style of football, and it is hard to keep that up throughout 38 games when you do have such big teams to play against in the likes of the whole season. But what the Zerbi has done at Brighton is something to applaud for sure. I think any team that gets him would be lucky. So, where'd you guys see him? What's his move? What's his next move?
There's a lot of talks of him joining Man United with the potential exit of Ten Hag, which we'll probably touch up on a little bit. But his decision to leave the club makes sense. They had a little European season, not with the same squad he had before. He was missing big players, McAllister, players that were injured, that were not playing the season before. And the interest of bigger clubs makes him want to maybe get some personal development. Like, hey, I'm having interest from Bayern, who's not going to have their coach at the end of the season. Juventus just going to let go of Maximiliano Allegri. Man United potentially is going to let go of their coach. There's bigger things for me, not him dissing the club in any way, but it's more of a personal development. Maybe in his personal life doesn't like his family living in Brighton. Just, you don't ever know. And more of a soccer perspective, this would be great for him. There's a lot of clubs who want him. Pep Guardiola's given a lot of talk about him, how he's such a great, excellent manager. I don't know if you guys saw that podcast with Kevin Prince Boateng, how he's like saying how he's one of the best managers, if not the best that he's ever played with. We're talking about a player who's played in like Barca, big teams, and just giving a lot of prize and talk to this manager who many teams want for a reason. He came to Brighton for a season, put him in Europe the next. So who doesn't want that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been a great coach, and obviously, if I were Manchester United, I'd definitely be looking to get rid of Ten Hag and put him in that position. But the thing with Manchester United is their higher ups are really the problem. It's not the coach. The coach can only do so much, and when you buy players that don't benefit your system, I mean, there has to be a whole turnaround in Man United from the developmental system all the way up to the starting. The 25 players that are taken to the games day in and day out.
I agree. If I were a Man United fan, the arrival of De Zerbi would be very exciting. I feel like most United fans are over the whole Ten Hag era. The past 2-3 seasons,
for sure.
Ronaldo incident, a lot of fans have turned their backs on Anthony. This team is just ready for a turnaround. It's just like Arsenal a few years ago, going through a horrible phase. Now that they see that, okay, they're where they are now, why can't we be there? All that they had to do was bring in a winning coach. Obviously, sign players, but it all comes with the coach.
Yeah, exactly.
And definitely don't overspend for sure. Just like we've already mentioned before, is just finding the right players that fit your system. But Manchester United, in this case, have to figure out what their system is first, foremost, because they definitely don't have that. But that's pretty much all we're going to touch on in the Premier League. Now we're going to move forward to Liga MX. I know there was a lot of exciting stuff going down with the semifinals wrapping up and moving into the final. I think it's in a week or so, in a week's time. But we're going to start with America versus Chivas because it's a Super Clásico, and a game where the first leg was basically favorable for America, and Tomas was arguing me on this one, saying that Chivas have more favoritism going into this game because they're like have a solid defense or whatever. But I mean, yeah, you have a solid defense, but where are the goals going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only problem with Chivas. But I really didn't think that America deserved to advance in the terms that they were offensively subpar to what they've been this whole season. And the thing with that being that I really prefer this game to be a final, like a real final, because Cruz Azul doesn't have Chivas' defense, and their only real attacking point is Antuna, which when you have a mediocre defense in the terms of the Liga MX, because I mean that's what it's been like this season, and then you counter with Antuna, who has no notion of the game. He like every time there's a counterattack, he slows the ball down, and when there's like I saw this about 3 to 4 times only in the first half, where he was on a counterattack, he slows the ball down, and then when Monterrey was back, he tries to rush things when he should be rushing things when they're on a counter.
Yeah,
There's people back.
His whole mindset's like completely flipped, basically.
Yeah, so he has no real notion of the game. He crosses when he should be cutting in, and he cuts in when he should be crossing. And it's struggling to see that when you pair him up versus a solid defense that's America, they're going to lock him up completely. Because yes, Chivas has a bad offense, but Chivas' defense was able to limit America in many, many occasions.
Yeah, it had to be basically a set piece that was the main difference between them both. Because I feel like regardless, if they didn't get that goal, I think it would have been at 0-0 for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just look at how this America team was coming in to this season, like the beginning of the season, mid-season, they had a little drop in form, but then they got back up and they just went up in form for, I think it was for about the rest of the regular tournament up until losing to Pachuca, obviously, in the CONCACAF. And I expected Chivas to struggle more than they did versus this America team. I expected at least America winning 2-0, 2-1, but to be able to at least score more. And I just didn't get that. And I think going into this Cruz Azul game, I think America are favorites because this game, America Chivas should have been more of a final than America Cruz Azul, because Cruz Azul is subpar in their defense to what Chivas has proven to us.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I found about this final moving forward is like one of the first times we're seeing first and second place facing up against each other. It's been a while. I was trying to research when was the last time first and second place played the final against each other in Liga MX, and I couldn't find it because typically it's always like the lower half that ends up going to.
That's like 3 versus 6 or 4 versus 7. I've never seen that one before.
So this is kind of different, but we'll talk about the final kind of going towards the end. But now looking at the Monterrey versus Cruz Azul setting up the final, I think that was a much more enthusiastic game. There was a lot more energy in that game. I think it looked like there was a lot more to play for, because going back to the Super Clasico a little bit, I felt like both teams didn't really seem like they were playing a Clasico. It just looked like another game to them, or they're playing it very safe pretty much. But Monterrey and Cruz Azul, especially in the second leg, they went all out in a game in the first leg where Cruz Azul went up 1-0 in Monterrey, and now they had everything to play for at home. They had something to hold on to, basically. And they did that throughout most of the game. They found that first goal, but then Monterrey came back basically out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, that was really surprising because throughout the whole first half, they had so many chances to put it away and, get a fast lead, get a good lead. They had at least 2 to 3 chances that were like clear chances in the first half alone. And then you go into the second half where they miss a lot of chances more, but they finished 2. And then before the second goal, Gallardo misses a tap in.
Yeah, complete sitter. Yeah, for sure.
It's just, I don't think Cruz Azul deserved to advance. I mean, Monterrey completely exposed them defensively, and they were at El Estadio Azul, defending most of the game, and they got scored on twice.
Yeah, I feel like we mentioned earlier, if there was at least 10 more minutes of extra time added, they would have found that last goal for sure.
Where Chivas was going back. You want to go?
I was going to say it would have been a different result, definitely.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was for sure going to be a different result. But going back to that Chivas game, Chivas goes to Estadio Azteca, closes over there, loses 1-0, where Cruz Azul loses 2-1 at home. And if they're not able to maintain a win at home, how are they going to win this title? It's just impossible. Yeah. And America and Monterrey, their levels of attacks are approximately the same.
Yeah. I mean, the only difference I see, the difference between Cruz Azul and then the likes of Monterrey and America's Cruz Azul, and I heard the commentators talking about this, is that they don't have enough depth. Like you see Monterrey bringing in quality, substitutions, and Cruz Azul, it's just their starting 11 that they have, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, on a double leg, I'd rather have preferred Monterrey to go through. And I mean, we'll keep it there because what I'm going to say next is going into our next topic.
So let's look at the final. Let's set up the final real quick because now we have El Clásico Joven. I think the last time we saw this final was 2013, maybe.
2013, yeah.
I remember that was an iconic. I remember I was at a restaurant with my family and Moises Munoz scored that header in like the last minutes.
Yeah, I remember that. I was at my uncle's carne asada, and he was like a big America fan, and I swear he cried. I mean, that was the time where they tied Chivas. That's why.
Was that when they went to overtime? Was there overtime back in that?
It went all the way to penalties.
Oh yeah, you're right. I remember because then the penalty. Who was it? Layun slipped when he scored.
Layun slipped and scored.
Yeah. So maybe, and it's funny actually. This game is going to be on the same day. I think the 26th. I think the first leg or second leg. I think that's the first leg, obviously, because that's a few days away. The first leg is going to be the same day that the first leg was played back all those years ago, like what, 11 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see Cruz Azul winning though. The stars are aligned for America to win again.
So basically, what we're thinking is que lo van a Cruz Azulear, which is their trademark word for bottling. That's what they do. Cruz Azul, they bottle it, even though they did win the league like a few years ago. We're not even going to count that because it wasn't even called like the Apertura Clausura. Was called Guardianes or whatever. That does not count.
For the COVID season, right?
Yeah, it was like a COVID season.
You can take that trophy away.
Yeah, that one doesn't count for sure. But yeah, looking into this final, I mean, Tomas, you already sound pretty confident that America's going to be the one winning. Honestly, I agree. Like, I don't see Cruz Azul. I can see them competing because they do look better compared to years past, and especially if you look at that team that played against America back all those years ago. I think they seem a little bit more hopeful. They have a lot more like resilience in their squad. You know, they're able to face adversity like we saw against Monterrey. Even though they were 2 goals down, they were still able to hold on. But will it be enough against an America team that maybe is going to have a little bit more of a boost in morale after winning the semifinals, after winning the Clásico? So it's going to be hard to see, but it's definitely a difficult one to predict. Don't put your money on it. I would probably tell you guys don't put no money on this, especially you, Jonathan.
Money on America, bro.
Yeah, I mean, the favors are more towards America, definitely. But for Cruz Azul fans, you know, it is a Clásico Joven. They're going to come out playing with their hearts out. It is a final, obviously, with both teams having players that both want to prove why they deserve to be in their respective Copa America sides. Because I think like every team has a player from different ethnicities that are going to the Copa America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, right now is not the time to focus on what's coming up. It's time to focus on club football. It's also mostly about personal development. We see on Tuna, I don't think the first game against Monterrey he even registered a shot on target or even a shot in general. And the second game, we saw them at home. Monterrey played with more of a possession-based game. I think, like Tomas said, the first 20 minutes, the Cruz Azul keeper already had a few saves. I think he had like 3 already. He had like so many chances to score. Then they came, was it around the 76th and 80th minute when Monterrey scored those 2 quick goals. And right away, Cruz Azul was like, okay, I have to, wake up. What are we doing?
Yeah.
We're going to go to a final. We're at home. We're not about to be losing at home, which they lost. Obviously, they passed on the long run. But now the time is to focus on, okay, we lost against Monterrey, but we're in the final. That doesn't matter anymore. We're playing against America, arguably their biggest, if not their biggest rival. Like you said, the Clásico Joven, everyone knows about this. How we touched up a little bit about the final 11 years ago in 2013-14 season, I think it was.
Yeah, right. I feel like this is the year they're going to try to look for their revenge because this is the perfect opportunity to do so.
Exactly, it is. And hopefully, they want to prove everyone wrong. Pretty sure we're not the only ones that are favoring America over Cruz Azul. But we'll see. It's going to be an exciting game, exciting final. First leg, I believe, is in Cruz Azul, right? At the Cruz Azul Stadium.
I have no idea, honestly. I haven't checked what
look a little bit more into it.
My bad, y'all. After a little bit of technical difficulties, we've sorted it out. But just kind of wrapping things up. Well, yes, we have the final coming up, and we're definitely going to touch on that when the final ends. Quick predictions. America.
I say so. First leg, America ties 0-0 at the Estadio Azul because they're really good at keeping a 0-0, and I don't see Cruz Azul being able to attack a team that solely that defends with a high block or a medium block. And I mean, Cruz Azul is just subpar. Their attack is subpar to America's defense. They're not on the same level, and America is clearly, if they decide to defend the first leg, at the Estadio Azul and take it back to the Azteca, they're going to do that and go 0-0. So they win it at the Azteca, I'd say 1-2 to 2-0. Or 2-1. I want Cruz Azul to score first.
All right, we're gonna spice things up with that 2-1. What about you, Jonathan? What are you thinking for that?
I definitely agree with Tomas's statement, but just to differentiate a little bit, make things a little bit more interesting. I'd say Cruz Azul wins the first game at home 1-0, whether it's a lucky goal, scrappy goal, no matter what it is, it's still a goal in the final. And then to hype things up, make things more interesting when we go back to the Azteca, America's going to come out guns blazing, playing mostly possessive football. We saw Cruz Azul in their own stadium get outpossessed by Monterrey, who wanted it more. They wanted that goal. They were down already. And that's going to be America. But the difference here is America is going to come out guns blazing, and eventually we'll get the W. I'm saying 3-1. Second leg. 3-1. 2 goals. One goal in the first half. Cruz Azul scores. Then another goal by America. Then just before the end of the game, America comes and closes it all out at Azteca.
I feel like you guys already kind of like seeing the final being played out in your heads already. I can't even think that far. I'm gonna go America. I'm not gonna give any first leg or second leg. I don't know. Don't ask me. But I think America in the end is gonna be the champion, and they're gonna get that 15 championship, that bicampeonato that they're desperately looking for, so they can rub it in the face of all Chivas fans. But now, looking at the format in Liga MX, kind of quickly just wrapping things up on Liga MX, and maybe we can see some sort of change moving down the line. I personally don't really like the whole playoff system. I don't like the away goal idea. They don't like the higher seed idea. I don't like any of that, basically. I would prefer that they go to a European style of table where it's just a full league season and the top one is the winner. Like, very simple. It's a lot more attractive. You get more games played, and you don't get this like overexertion of the same games being played every few weeks. Like we saw Pachuca America being played in like 5 times a season. Like, I don't want to see that. I want to build hype for these games, for example.
I agree. We see before a lot has changed in Liga MX, whether it's the descenso, ascenso, the higher seeds passing by, which has been happening this whole year. And definitely it would be amazing to see him do a whole year long, like the Premier League does. But I feel like that's what Liga MX wants. They want to be different from everybody else. They love their clausura and apertura. It's been like that forever. We all know that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And I get trying to change things for the better, trying to change their league, trying to make it more attractive in sense of no more ascenso, no more penalty shootouts. But that's what made the game exciting. We see it in different tournaments, Champions League. I know they took away the away goal, but if they tie, they still go on to the extra time, I believe. They still do that, right? And then the penalties. I feel like that's what really is missed right now in the Liga MX, that extra excitement that will put you at the edge of the sheet. Because if Cruz Azul is, like yesterday, they were winning or they were losing 1-2, but they knew, okay, if we can hold on, we're not going to go to extra time. We're just going to pass through.
Yeah, because they're the higher seed.
Exactly. Where back then they knew, oh my gosh, if they score, we're going to play another 30 minutes of football and potentially some gut-wrenching penalties, which is something that we miss. Well,
for sure. Like, as a neutral fan, that's what you want to see. You want all the drama, basically. That's the entertainment part. Because like in the Clásico, where it's 0-0 in the first leg, because we see an America team not really needing to go out and needing to win. Like, a 0-0 is perfectly fine with them because it doesn't mean anything down the road. There needs to be like a little bit more of an incentive for these teams to play better, and that's what I like about the Champions League, is it took away the away goal rule. So now that away team can go out. They can go out and look for that goal and not feel scared, or the whole team can go all out and not feel scared about receiving, because that away goal technically doesn't even matter.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, CONCACAF really needs to look into that, because in the Champions Cup, they still have the away goal rule, and I think that's just lame, because the first leg would probably be held where the team wants to go 0-0, so they could go into the opponent's stadium and maybe tie 1-1 and they advance because they scored a goal, which is really lame in so many factors. And going back to Liga MX, so you have a higher standing. That's one advantage. If you tie, you advance. Another advantage. That's just like, how are you going to be a higher seed, tie, lose at your own home, and advance? It just makes no sense. And for me, the away goals rule made more sense because you have the incentive that you play away and you score, and that goal gives you more of an advantage because you're the lower seed. So that's like an advantage for the lower seed. So you said earlier, like the 1 and 2 play against each other. Like since when has that happened? That hasn't happened because the away goals rule. Now that there's a standings rule, America tied versus Pachuca, Cruz Azul tied versus Monterrey, and they advanced. I mean, you could tie every game. You could tie every game up into the final, and maybe even tie the final, go into penalties and win it. Like, what kind of football format is that? It's just terrible.
Like, where's the entertainment behind
It's
that?
entertainment. Like, if you were, if Cruz Azul knew that they were 2-2, aggregate, they would have come out with more intensity and it would have made a better game.
Yeah. And if you think about it, say if you're trying to introduce a friend or somebody into getting into the Liga MX and they're watching the quarterfinals, the semifinals, if they were watching the Cruz Azul Monterrey game and they saw that the teams are tied on aggregate, they're like, okay, like what's next? Do they go to penalties? Do they go to extra time? Because that's typically how games play out when they tie. But then you hear they're like, oh no, actually this team goes through because they're the higher seed. They're probably going to be like, oh, that's pretty dumb. Like, why would they do that?
That's like bullshit because you tied the higher seed, so the higher seed goes through, but you're leveled on paper, but he goes through on standings, which
Yeah. I understand the whole like going through on standings. Like it provides that incentive in the beginning of the season to finish as high as possible with as most points as possible. But if you're gonna stick to that, then might as well just do what the European leagues do, where the first place just wins the league. Basically, if you're gonna stick to that, why then take it to a playoff level and it's like a whole nother league almost?
I mean, the standings should really only give you the incentive to close at home because that's what the Champions League does. That's what the CONCACAF Champions League gives you. Because when 1 versus 2 in the Champions League face each other, right after the group stage, it's you close at home because you're first place, but that's the only advantage you get. And that's really how it should be because imagine if 1 versus 2 played each other, and if one ties, they advance. I mean, the first seed is usually better than the second seed either way. On top of that, they have the advantage of tying. I advance. It'd just be some part of my sorry for my language, but some bullshit football.
Yeah.
Because what team would go out to tie and be like, oh well, we advanced because we tied? It's
Not
just
only that, but
mediocre.
it doesn't make the Liga MX attractive to players from foreign countries that want to come play. Let's say Monterrey wants to get another Sergio Canales from Europe, and they'll look into that. Not just the whole format, but just the way that the whole season is played out. Maybe some like it, the older players more favorably because they're getting a big break, or just twice a year it's a different little tournament or season.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also the clubs got to take that into consideration, the fact that this is not attractive football, not just for the fans and neutrals, but also for the players themselves. And for potential clubs who want to sign the Antunas, the players who are more known, basically, they say, okay, we haven't seen enough potential out of this player, out of these games. They're not really playing their best football possible. How's that going to help more favorably the Mexican players in the long run?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. As a neutral, as a fan, we could only give in our 2%. Things are changing every year.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, just to see what you guys thought about it too, because I've always thought it was stupid, pretty much, like the whole apertura clausura. But like you said, I mean, that's something that I've grown up with. I've never seen anything different, basically.
One more thing I wanted to add, and there's nothing wrong with these teams playing. Okay, they knew these are the rules. Let's take advantage of them. Hey, all we got to do is tie. If all you got to do is tie, get to the final, let's do it. Which is kind of lame as a neutral fan. You kind of want to see these plays, especially if you're a fan of the club. You want to see these fans go out, guns blazing, play the best football they can play. But if they're just going out there, let's just try to hold on to this 1-1 tie, and we're going to go to the final, guys. We'll focus on that later on. Like, no. That's why Monterrey scored those 2 goals yesterday, because Azul was too comfortable. Even in their own stadium, they were vulnerable. And what are the odds of that happening at America again? Not taking anything away from Cruz Azul. I mean, much respects to them. They made the final. Congrats. Who knows? Maybe they'll win somehow. If they do, congrats once again. But this is the reason why America is the most favorable team right now.
Yeah, because they actually won their semifinal. As for Cruz Azul, they lost at home and advanced, which is just it makes no sense if you European fan, European person. Like, why would they advance? They lost at home Oh, because they scored 1 goal away. Okay, so they're tied. It's 2-2.
Yeah, it wouldn't make it. I feel like if there was a neutral like watching or someone that's just not formally or completely formally introduced to Liga MX, they'd be super confused. So just something that I wanted to bring up because I do just think it is just a very weird format, and hopefully they kind of take a look at that, especially adding Ascenso, Descenso, moving down the line, because that's something that you need to push for more competitive edge in football. But yeah, anyways, that kind of wraps everything up for today. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for helping me out on the podcast. Make sure to tune into CharlaFootball on our social platforms. That's CHARLA football. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, all that. So we got a lot of stuff coming, especially with the very hectic summer schedule. We're going to see. We're going to be talking about football basically every day. So make sure to follow the Instagram because, we're going to be posting every day. But when it comes to the podcast, we're going to try to figure that out because there's going to be games literally played every single day for a whole month straight. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to set up our little schedule. But we'll figure that out when it gets closer to the date. But obviously, Copa America, Euros, we're going to talk about that. But thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.